Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
1919 Black-Eyed Kids incident in Sandoval, Illinois disclosed. The following story was told to me, back in the 1960s, by my grandfather. It was an incident that took place sometime in early 1919 near Sandoval, Illinois. He told me it had been hot the past summer and the heat lingered for months, so he had all the windows and both doors open on his house. He was sitting on the porch reading a book because it was too stuffy to be inside. He went in to make a snack, get a drink when he heard a knock. This struck him as odd because most people would just call out that knew him, so he figured it was a vagrant looking for a meal or labor. He lived by the train tracks, so hobos would come from time to time, and I guess it was normal. So he goes to the hall and two kids are standing in the entranceway and call out, "May we come in to rest? It's a long way home." So he says they were welcome to sit on the porch, but it's too hot inside to be comfortable. He asked if they came from the rails and they just said, "We need to come in, may we?" From what he said, the kids made him feel peculiar because, 1, they wouldn't look at him directly, and 2, they were too clean. My grandfather said that riding the trains was dirty. You get grease on you and coal dust, and sometimes you get cuts on your hands or knees. He lost his leg doing the very thing which kept him out of the war. But these kids, from what he said, were pristine, like they were going to Sunday school. They weren't sweating and their hair was neat, and it struck him as odd. If they had walked in open fields in the middle of the heat, they would be unkempt or disheveled. He asks again if they would like to sit on the porch, and the girl, it was a boy and girl, but the boy didn't speak, just repeated, "May we come in?" And then she just kept asking, may we, over and over again until my grandfather slammed his hand down and says, "Damn you both, no." The girl stopped speaking and he said they both just stood quiet until the girl looked at him, eyes black like coal, and said once more, "Mister, may we please come in?" My grandfather just walked to the kitchen and sat down, not knowing what to do. He said he felt like someone punched him in the stomach. He said he sat there until his dog came rushing in the house, shaking like a leaf. So at the end he never told anyone. He chalked it up to heat exhaustion, but he said it troubled him for years. I just wonder how far back of stories of BEK go? SS.
Chilling Black-Eyed Kids Experience. This happened about a year ago. I was going into work alone. It was 4 a.m. in the morning and no one was in the parking lot but me. So I'm about to get out of my car to go into my building, but first I bend down to get my cell phone charger. When I look back up, a teen girl is on my driver's side window and a small boy is on the passenger side. The girl is wearing a tank top and has really pale skin and stringy blonde hair. The little boy had his hair shaved off. She says, "Excuse me sir, but we need a ride down the block to my mom's house. If we walk she'll be angry." Now the boy looks emotionless and unblinking. I get the weird feeling in my stomach saying don't do it. And I say, "I need to go to work, but here's money for a cab." She says, "We don't want your money, we want a ride." I blink and I look down at my phone as it suddenly rang then hung up. The kid's eyes were as black as night. My heart's pounding. I think, crap, these kids are the ones people are talking about that kill people. So I say with some authority, "No. You take the money and go away." As I reach for some ones in my ashtray and look up at the kids and they're gone. Now it's a big parking lot. I'd have seen them had they run off. I even drive around the parking lot and building. No kids. Even drove around the empty block they claimed to live on, and there was no one there. Needless to say, I waited until the sun came up to go to work that day.
BEK. In the Philippines. Black-Eyed Kids stories have been my favorite to read about since I first discovered them last year. I've always thought of them as just that, stories. Until now. On September 8th, my friend that lives in the Philippines told me about an experience she had the previous night. Around 6 p.m., her and her cousin cleaned and trimmed the excess leaves and branches along the path to their laundry area. At 9 p.m., a thunderstorm occurred and she ran outside to make sure the front gate was locked and that there was no laundry on the line. As she was heading to the front gate, she glanced over at the laundry area to check it, and that's when she saw him. She was about 4 or 5 feet away from a boy that was about 14 or 15 years old. He was wearing a long baggy shirt and shorts that were dark gray in color. He was just standing at the end of the small gate leading to the laundry area, with his hands at his side staring at her. This took a few seconds until she made it to the front gate and checked that it was locked. She immediately turned around and headed back, but the boy was gone. She got goosebumps then and quickly ran into the house. I thought at first she had just seen a neighborhood kid up to mischief and jokingly asked if his eyes were black, and she said yes. Thinking she thought I had just meant the pupil and iris, I looked up pictures of BEKs that have been created for articles. I showed her one and she said, yes. Like that. She then said maybe it was just her imagination, but she had never heard of BEKs until I mentioned it after sending the picture. The skeptical part of me wants to say it was just her imagination, but she didn't know the description of a BEK until after I mentioned them, which was after she described what she saw. So, maybe it was just a neighbor kid out trying to scare someone. Full black eye contacts are available for sale, but are they easily accessible to a teenager in the Philippines? Was it really a BEK, or was it just a ghost that was checking out the freshly cleaned and trimmed path? Whatever it was, it has made my believerism greatly overcome my skepticism.
Black-eyed kids' bizarre experiences. I've had 2 encounters with them. The first time was 2 years ago or so, in a gas station parking lot off of Highway 58 in Tennessee, at like 3 or 4 in the morning. My friend had parked towards the far end of the lot around the side of the building. I was sitting in the passenger side of my friend's car, waiting for him to come out of the store from buying his cigarettes. I was fairly relaxed, enjoying the radio, and then I hear a knock on the window. I looked over and there was a boy, he looked about 12, and he was wearing a gray hoodie with his hood pulled up. I cracked the window and asked him what he wanted and responded with, "Can I borrow your phone?" I wasn't going to let some strange kid use my phone, so I told him that I was sure they'd let him use the one inside the store. He kept insisting on it though, and it was the weirdest thing because the longer he stood there, the more unsettled and scared I started to feel. I had rolled up the window by this point, and he became something less than aggressive but more than insistent. That's when I saw his eyes. His hood slipped back because of his movements, and the only way I can describe the feeling of looking into those eyes is primal fear. That's about the time he quickly moved to the nearby tree line, and a few seconds later my friend got into the car. He said I was pale as a ghost and asked me what was wrong. At the time, I had no idea what the hell that was all about and had trouble describing it all to him. He looked at me strangely and said he didn't see the kid at all. That really got to me. So when I got home, I couldn't sleep and found out exactly what I had encountered. The second encounter happened shortly after at my house. This was about 3.5 weeks ago. I'm a night owl, so I'm up at pretty ridiculous times of night a lot of the time, and I was up at around 3:30ish in the morning, yet again, and watching YouTube videos. Then I hear a knock on the front door. I would have normally just avoided a knock on the door at that time of night, but my roommate's girlfriend had left only about 20 minutes prior, so I assumed it was her having forgotten something. It wouldn't have been the first time. So I went to the door and cracked it a bit to look outside, and there were these 3 kids. One looked to be around a 16-year-old girl, the other 2 were little boys who appeared 6 and 10 respectively. They wouldn't look directly at me and held their heads at a downward angle. The porch light cast a pretty heavy shadow over their features, so what they were was again obscured. I hadn't forgotten about my previous encounter, but I didn't know any of the neighborhood yet and couldn't just assume BEK when it could have been desperation standing at my doorstep. I opened the door a bit more and before I could ask what they were after, the girl said, "Can we come in to use your phone?" I told her I could fetch it and let her use it, but again she asked to come inside. It was as if I hadn't said anything at all, and her insistence grew, just like last time. She stepped from the front walk to the bottom step of my stoop and looked up at me. I saw those eyes again, slammed the door and went back to the living room, a good distance away from the front door. I heard a few more knocks over the following few minutes, growing more aggressive with each volley until they stopped. I didn't dare get close to the door or windows again until sunrise. I've since installed security cameras around the perimeter of the house, and if they come back, I'll post the footage. TS.
Two black-eyed kids terrorize Glade Springs, West Virginia resident. I had never heard of the black-eyed kids until I encountered them. Still not knowing who or what the hell they were, I did what any modern young man would do. I googled them. I shocked that I wasn't the only one. Had I not seen them for myself, I would have just thought it to be another modern urban legend gone viral. Besides my girlfriend, I've only told my brother, who is into everything creepy and horror. I'm an accountant. My girlfriend and I live in a small gated community in southern West Virginia called Glade Springs. The community has about 150 houses, a country club, and a steakhouse and bar called Bunkers. Now anyone can come through the gate during the business hours, but after they close, the front security gate stops all traffic and makes sure you are a resident. If you are a visitor, they call the house that you're going to verify that you are actually expecting them. Sometimes it's a hassle, but hey, don't have to worry about a robbery. So imagine my surprise when my doorbell chimed at 2:30 a.m. I was jarred awake and wasn't sure if it wasn't just a dream, considering I had just went to bed shortly before. I rolled over and looked at the clock, noticing the time, and when my doorbell chimed again, I felt a cold chill run through my body. Not reading too much into it, it could be one of my neighbors has an emergency, right? I nonchalantly made my way to the door. Now I see how foolish I really was, and opened it. Luckily, the wrought iron storm door was still locked because who or what stood before me was not a resident of the community. Two young boys stood at my doorstep, one looking about 17 and another looking about 10, wearing dark hooded sweatshirts and jeans. The young one had shaggy, dirty blonde hair and would only look down at the stone steps, and the older one had his hood pulled and his head tipped to where I could only see from half his nose down. My voice caught in my throat, and before I could even ask what they wanted, the older one spoke. His voice sounded forced and dry. There was no emotion or sincerity of what he said. "I'm sorry to bother you and your girlfriend, but we need to come in and use your phone. We've been in an accident." I felt the familiar chill return to my whole body. How did he know my girlfriend was here? I wrote it off as my Tahoe and her VW was in the driveway, and I figured they just assumed. I tripped over my words. Something about these kids wasn't right, wasn't normal, wasn't human. I can bring you my cell phone and you can call. I don't get service inside here, so you have to stand on the sidewalk to call. I finally said nervously. Of course I was lying through my clenched teeth. I did not want these kids in my house. "Well, my brother really needs to use your bathroom, Chuck. We have to come in," the older one said. And that's when I went into complete a panic. He knew my name. "I'm sorry, are you from here? How did you know my name?" The words practically shook out of my mouth. That's when he became slightly hostile and demanded to be let inside, and I told them I was sorry, but I couldn't help them, and just as I was about close the main door is when it happened. The both of them snapped their heads upwards and looked me straight in the eyes. Black. No iris, no pupil, no retina, just pure deep black. I was paralyzed with fear. For a second I thought those kids were just playing a really cruel joke and had snuck in the community somehow and had bought some of those freaky supernatural demon sclera contacts. That was until I heard ringing. It was like a ringing sound that you hear when you have a hearing test done, that digital high-pitched shrill ringing, and then the flashbacks started. That's when everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was shaken awake lying in the mudroom floor, my girlfriend standing over me with a worried look. "What the hell, Chucky?" she asked. I had no idea how to answer her. My head had taken a good whack against the slate floor, and a bit of dried blood was stuck in my hair, but other than that I was fine physically. I slowly remembered everything that had happened and looked at the door. Daylight. I've never been so happy to see morning in all my life. I told my girlfriend everything that had happened, and I honestly think she thought I had brain damage from hitting the floor, but she insisted she believed me. And then we Googled it, and I believe that's when she really started to believe me, was then. I don't know who or what they are, or where they come from, but they're not of this world. I know that for a fact. For some reason I had a lingering thought. I'm still not sure if they put the thought in my head or not, that they wanted me to know that even my memories aren't safe. They are very strong and seem to be growing in numbers. For some reason they seem to not be able to hurt you physically unless you invite them in, which I don't know since either no one has ever let them, or the ones that have aren't around to tell their story anymore. But they can get your mind. Since that night I feel as though I'm being watched. I see them out of the corner of my eye occasionally. I'll look at my girlfriend while we're at the movies or diner, and her eyes will be solid black for a split second, and worst of all they took one of my most precious and most often reminisced memories and turned it into something sinister, something that's now a constant reminder of the black-eyed kids. See.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.